Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if I told you that massive SUV sitting in your driveway right now, the one you paid 50 grand for because it made you feel successful and safe, is actually neither of those things? What if the entire reason you wanted it in the first place was engineered in a boardroom by people who studied your deepest insecurities? Before you click away, hear me out, because what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see every vehicle on the road. And if this resonates with you, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're diving deep into something the auto industry desperately doesn't want you to understand. We're talking about the greatest marketing con of the last 30 years, a psychological operation so successful that it convinced an entire generation to abandon practical cars for vehicles that cost more, guzzle more gas, pollute more, and statistically, here's the kicker, are often less safe than the sedans they replaced. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind to 1984. And no, this isn't some Orwellian dystopia, though the manipulation tactics we're about to explore might make you think otherwise. Picture America in the mid-80s. The economy is recovering, suburban sprawl is accelerating, and the big three automakers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, are facing a crisis. Japanese imports like Honda and Toyota are absolutely destroying them in the sedan market, with reliable, fuel-efficient cars that American manufacturers simply couldn't match. The profit margins on sedans were razor thin, sometimes just 2 or 3%, and the executives in Detroit were panicking. Then someone had a billion-dollar idea. See, there was this regulatory loophole that classified trucks and truck-based vehicles differently from passenger cars. These light trucks didn't have to meet the same fuel economy standards, didn't have the same safety requirements, and here's what made the executives' eyes light up like slot machines. They could be sold with profit margins of 20, 30, sometimes 40% per vehicle. But there was a problem. Americans didn't want trucks unless they actually needed trucks. Contractors bought trucks, farmers bought trucks, but suburban families, they wanted cars. So the question became, how do you convince millions of people who don't need a truck to buy a truck? The answer is you don't sell them a truck, you sell them a fantasy. Enter the rise of the SUV, the sport utility vehicle, a name so deliberately vague it could mean anything. And that's exactly the point. Ford launched the Explorer in 1990 with ads showing rugged individuals conquering mountains and crossing rivers. Never mind that 95% of Explorers would never leave paved roads. These weren't commercials selling transportation, they were selling identity, selling the idea that you weren't just a suburban parent driving kids to soccer practice, you were an adventurer, a pioneer, someone who could handle anything life threw at you. And brother, did it work! By 2000, SUVs and light trucks accounted for half of all vehicle sales in America, the fastest transformation of the auto market in history. But here's where it gets really twisted, and this is where the class illusion comes in. Automakers realized something profound about human psychology. People will pay enormous premiums for products that signal status, even if that status is completely manufactured. A fully loaded Honda Accord in 2000 might cost $25,000, a practical, reliable, genuinely safe vehicle. But put that same person in a Ford Explorer with leather seats and a moonroof for $38,000, and suddenly they feel like they've moved up in the world. Why? Because the SUV is bigger, it's higher, it's more expensive, and most importantly, it makes you literally look down on other drivers. This isn't speculation, this is documented marketing strategy. Internal documents from the era show automakers explicitly targeting what they called insecure strivers, people who were middle class but wanted to project wealth and success. The SUV became the perfect vehicle for this psychological need. It was more expensive than a car, which meant you could afford more. It was bigger, which meant you were more important. It had that commanding view of the road, which triggered something primal in our lizard brains about dominance and control. One marketing executive, speaking anonymously to a trade publication, admitted they were selling emotional satisfaction, not transportation, and that the target customer was someone who felt their life was chaotic and wanted a vehicle that made them feel protected and in control. Now here's where the safety lie comes in, and this should make you angry. From the very beginning, SUVs were marketed as safer vehicles. The ads implied it, the salespeople said it outright, and millions of buyers believed it. I mean, it makes intuitive sense, right? Bigger vehicle equals more protection in a crash, except that's not how physics works, and the auto industry knew it. In the 1990s, multiple studies showed that SUVs had significantly higher rollover rates than passenger cars because of their high center of gravity. That commanding seating position everyone loved, it meant the vehicle was top-heavy and prone to tipping over in emergency maneuvers. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety found that SUV occupants were actually more likely to die in single-vehicle crashes than people in passenger cars. But you didn't see those statistics in the commercials, did you? Instead, you saw SUVs plowing through snowstorms and protecting happy families. The cognitive dissonance is staggering when you think about it. And the financial dimension of this con is even more insidious. Let's break down the real cost of SUV ownership compared to a sedan. First, the purchase price is typically $15,000 to $25,000 more for an SUV versus a comparable sedan. Second, fuel costs. An SUV getting 18 miles per gallon versus a sedan getting 32 means you're spending roughly an extra $1,200 per year on gas. Third, insurance premiums are higher because SUVs are more expensive to repair and cause more damage in accidents. Fourth, depreciation. SUVs generally depreciate faster than quality sedans. Add it all up over a 10-year ownership period, and the average SUV buyer pays somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 more than they would have for a functionally equivalent car. $50,000! That's a down payment on a house. That's a college fund. That's retirement savings. But automakers convinced people to spend that money on a vehicle that doesn't actually serve their needs any better. Some of you might be thinking, but Mark, I have kids, I need the space. Do you though? A modern midsize sedan has virtually the same interior passenger space as most midsize SUVs. The difference is the cargo area. And let's be honest, how often are you actually hauling 8 feet of lumber? The average American uses their vehicle's full cargo capacity maybe 6 times per year. For those 6 times, you could rent a truck for $50 and save $40,000 on your vehicle purchase. But that logical argument doesn't work because this was never about logic. This is about emotion and identity. Here's the really fascinating historical parallel. This exact same con happened before in American automotive history. In the 1950s, as prosperity spread after World War II, automakers convinced Americans they needed bigger, longer, more powerful cars with tail fins and chrome. These land yachts got terrible fuel economy, were expensive to maintain, and were actually quite dangerous, but they signaled prosperity and success in post-war America. Then the oil crisis of the 70s hit, and suddenly everyone realized they'd been sold an expensive fantasy. The market crashed, the big boats disappeared, and practical, efficient cars took over. Sound familiar? We're watching the same cycle repeat itself right now. Today's full-size pickup trucks and massive 3-row SUVs are the tail-finned Cadillacs of our era, expensive status symbols that will look absurd to future generations. And the automakers are doubling down on the same strategy because it works. The average transaction price for a new vehicle in America just hit $48,000. $48,000. That's more than many people earn in an entire year, and a huge chunk of that inflation is driven by the shift to SUVs and trucks. We're financing these vehicles for 72, 84, even 96 months now, paying interest on a depreciating asset for 8 years. It's financial insanity, but the marketing is so effective that people genuinely believe they need these vehicles. The environmental cost is staggering too. If Americans had kept buying sedans at 1990s rates instead of shifting to SUVs and trucks, we'd be emitting about 300 million fewer tons of carbon dioxide per year. That's equivalent to taking 70 million cars off the road entirely. But again, you don't see that in the commercials. You see happy families and rugged individualism. So what's the solution? How do we break free from this manufactured desire? First, recognize that your vehicle is a tool, not an identity. The person driving a 10-year-old Camry might be wealthier than the person in a brand new Escalade because they understood this principle. Second, do the math. Actually calculate what that SUV is costing you over 10 years compared to alternatives. Third, ask yourself honestly, what do I actually need this vehicle to do? Not what do I want it to make me feel, but what practical function does it serve? And finally, understand that true status, real class, comes from financial security and freedom, not from the badge on your grill. The automakers spent billions studying your psychology, identifying your insecurities, and crafting the perfect emotional pitch to separate you from your money. They're still doing it right now with electric SUVs, convincing people they need a $90,000 electric Hummer to save the environment, as if that makes any sense at all. But here's the thing, you're smarter than they think you are. You can see through the con once you know what to look for. Every time you see an SUV commercial now, watch for the techniques we've discussed. They're not showing you the vehicle, they're showing you a fantasy version of yourself. They're not selling transportation, they're selling status that doesn't actually exist. And they're counting on you not doing the math, not asking the hard questions, not realizing that the emperor has no clothes. The SUV class illusion is just that, an illusion. Breaking free from it might be one of the best financial and practical decisions you ever make. So next time you're at a dealership and that salesperson starts talking about how you deserve something bigger, something that reflects your success, remember what you learned here today. Remember that you're being played by a marketing strategy older than disco, refined over decades to exploit your deepest psychological vulnerabilities. You deserve better than that. Your bank account deserves better than that. And honestly, our roads and environment deserve better than that. If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, make sure you're subscribed to AUTOSAYS because we're going to keep pulling back the curtain on how the auto industry really works. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where we might just tackle why dealerships still exist in the age of the internet. And trust me, that rabbit hole goes even deeper than this one.